All right, diving deep today, huh? Paranoia and delusional disorder.
Yeah.
You gave us some pretty fascinating academic papers on this,
hmm
and we're gonna try to help you make sense of it all, without getting too bogged down in the clinical jargon.
It's a fascinating area to explore. We're going to look at how these disorders present themselves,
Hmm.
what might cause them, and explore, the complex landscape of treatment.
Okay.
So,
So let's just start with paranoia.
Yeah.
The text defines it as a mental illness that affects the brain.
right.
And it really changes how people think and feel. But I think what really struck me is this intense distrust and suspicion of others, often without any concrete evidence.
Yeah, that's a key characteristic.
Yeah.
And it has a huge impact on people's lives.
Hmm.
This constant feeling of threat makes it so incredibly difficult to form trusting relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And that can lead to isolation, and in some cases, even legal disputes or even violence.
Wow. The text mentions self-referential thinking, where someone feels like everyone is always talking about them.
Yeah.
That's got to be incredibly unnerving.
Oh, it can be. It can be very distressing. Imagine constantly feeling like you're the center of negative attention.
Hmm.
Um, even interpreting like everyday conversations or glances as personal attacks. It creates a very, very isolating reality.
Now, how do delusions then differ from paranoia
Okay.
in terms of their impact on someone's life and their ability to function?
Well, delusions are firmly held beliefs that are not true.
Okay.
And they can be so ingrained that even when presented with evidence to the contrary, the person still clings to them. And these beliefs can range from non-bizarre things that could potentially be true but aren't, to the utterly bizarre.
So give me an example. What's the difference between a non-bizarre and a bizarre delusion?
What someone might believe that they're being followed,
Right.
while unlikely it's not entirely impossible.
Sure.
So that would be a non-bizarre delusion. But if someone believes they are pregnant with puppies, well, that's venturing into the bizarre.
Okay. Why is this distinction important?
It's important because people with delusional disorder often don't exhibit any outwardly strange behavior. They can hold down jobs, they can maintain relationships, and they appear relatively normal.
Mm-hmm.
This can make it much harder to detect the disorder.
Wow. So it's almost like a hidden struggle for many.
Mm.
The source also mentions different types of delusional disorder,
Right.
each with unique implications. Can we unpack those a little bit?
Of course. So there's persecutory delusional disorder,
Right.
where someone believes they are being spied on or plotted against.
Mm-hmm.
This can lead to extreme defensiveness, social isolation, and even taking legal action against perceived enemies.
Wow. So they're in a constant state of alert.
Absolutely.
Would that lead to chronic stress and then in turn impact their physical health?
Absolutely. Living with that level of anxiety and fear takes a huge toll on both mental and physical well-being. It can exacerbate existing health conditions and even contribute to new ones.
So what other types are there?
Well, there's grandiose delusional disorder, where someone believes they possess extraordinary abilities or importance.
Mm-hmm.
This can affect their decisions, their relationships, and even their career choices.
While medication is often, the first line of defense in these situations, I'm curious about its long-term effectiveness.
Okay.
I mean, doesn't it risk masking the problem without addressing the underlying cause?
Yeah, that's a valid concern. Medication can certainly help manage the symptoms,
Yeah.
but it's not a cure. That's why a combination of approaches is usually recommended.
What about erotomanic delusional disorder? The text describes it as the conviction that someone, often a celebrity, is secretly in love with you.
Yeah.
What might drive someone to develop such a strong, unwavering belief?
That's a complex question.
Right.
There's no single answer. But often there's an underlying vulnerability, perhaps loneliness or lack of fulfillment in real-life relationships. That makes the fantasy so compelling.
This idea of clinging to beliefs despite evidence to the contrary reminds me of the jumping to conclusions bias you mentioned earlier. Yeah.
Could you elaborate on that a bit more?
Sure. People with delusions often reach conclusions based on very little evidence. It's as if they fill in the blanks with their fears, even if those fears are unfounded.
Right.
Imagine seeing a stranger glance at you in the street and instantly assuming that they're part of a conspiracy against you.
That would make the world a very scary place.
Yeah.
It must be hard for loved ones to reason with someone experiencing those types of delusions.
It can be incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
Now, if we shift our focus to potential causes, the material you provided offered a number of different theories.
Okay.
Some are more widely accepted than others.
Yeah, it seems like there's no easy answer when it comes to, pinpointing the cause.
Right.
Where do we even begin to untangle this web of potential factors?
Well, one theory suggests that genetics and brain chemistry play a role.
Okay.
Just like some people are predisposed to physical illnesses, others might inherit a vulnerability to certain mental health conditions.
So nature could be a contributing factor. Yeah, but it's rarely that simple. Environmental factors such as childhood trauma or chronic stress can also influence the development of these disorders. It's often a complex interplay of nature and nurture.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we can't discount the impact of life experiences on shaping how our brains function.
Exactly. And speaking of experiences, the research also points to the role of substance use.
Okay.
Certain drugs, particularly stimulants and hallucinogens, can trigger paranoid thinking, even in people who don't have a pre-existing disorder.
I've heard stories of people experiencing drug-induced psychosis. That sounds terrifying.
It can be.
Does that mean that if the drug use stops, the paranoia goes away too?
In many cases, yes. But it's not always that straightforward. Sometimes substance use can unmask an underlying vulnerability to paranoia, or even trigger a more persistent mental health issue.
Wow, that's a good reminder that our mental health is a delicate balance influenced by so many factors. What about the role of medical conditions? The source mentioned that paranoia can sometimes be a symptom of other illnesses.
Yeah, that's an important point. Neurological conditions like dementia, brain injuries, and even Parkinson's disease can sometimes manifest with paranoia as a symptom.
Oh, wow, it's almost like a clue, a signal that something else is going on.
Precisely. So if someone suddenly starts exhibiting paranoid behavior, it's crucial to rule out any underlying medical conditions or substance use issues.
It sounds like diagnosis can be quite complicated.
It can be. And just as the causes are multifaceted, so are the treatments.
Hmm.
There's no one-size-fits-all solution, but a combination of therapies is often the most effective approach.
Okay, so let's dive into those treatment options. What's typically the first line of defense?
Well, antipsychotic medication is often prescribed to manage symptoms, particularly that intense anxiety and fear associated with paranoia.
You mentioned earlier that medication alone doesn't address the root cause.
Right.
What else is recommended?
Well, that's where therapy comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is particularly helpful in challenging those distorted beliefs and developing coping mechanisms. It's about recognizing those thought patterns, questioning them, and ultimately replacing them with more realistic and helpful ones.
Can you give an example of how CBT might work in practice?
Sure. Imagine someone with persecutory delusions who believes their neighbors are plotting against them.
Right.
A CBT therapist might help them examine the evidence for this belief, explore alternative explanations and practice techniques for managing anxiety when those thoughts arise.
So it's about rewiring the brain, so to speak.
In a way, yes. It's about creating new neural pathways that support healthier thinking patterns.
That's fascinating. Are there other therapy options mentioned in the text?
Yes. Psychotherapy and family therapy can also be beneficial. Psychotherapy helps explore underlying emotional issues that might be fueling the paranoia, while family therapy improves communication and support systems within the family unit.
It sounds like a multi-pronged approach is key, addressing symptoms, thought patterns, and the social environment. What about the long-term outlook for people with these disorders? Is recovery possible?
That's a question with a complex answer. For some, symptoms may completely resolve with treatment. For others, it might be a lifelong journey of managing the condition.
What factors influence those outcomes?
Well, early detection and intervention are key. The earlier someone receives help, the better the chances of a positive outcome.
That underscores the importance of seeking help if you're experiencing these symptoms.
Right.
Or noticing them in someone you care about.
Absolutely. It's also important to remember that recovery isn't always linear. There can be setbacks and periods of remission. But even in cases of lifelong paranoia, symptoms can be managed, and individuals can live fulfilling lives.
That's reassuring to hear. So much of what we've talked about highlights the interconnectedness of our mental and physical health. What struck you the most as we've delved into this topic?
Yeah, it's fascinating how paranoia can be, a standalone issue or a symptom of something else entirely. It really underscores the importance of a holistic approach to both diagnosis and treatment. Yeah, I completely agree. We can't just treat the symptoms in isolation. We have to look at the whole person, their medical history, their life experiences, their support systems to develop an effective treatment plan.
It's like detective work, right?
Exactly.
Piecing together all the clues to understand the root cause of the problem.
Yeah, and that's why it's so crucial for mental health professionals to have a broad understanding of various disciplines,
Yeah.
from neurology to psychology to social work.
This has given me a much deeper appreciation for the complexities of paranoia and delusional disorder.
Mhm.
It's not just about, strange beliefs. It's about human beings struggling with real challenges, often hidden from view.
That's such an important point. These disorders are not a sign of weakness or character flaws. They are brain-based conditions that deserve compassionate and evidence-based treatment.
I think this deep dive has equipped us with not only a better understanding of these conditions, but also a greater sense of empathy for those who experience them.
Yeah, knowledge is power, but compassion is key. We can all play a role in reducing stigma and supporting those who are struggling.
Absolutely. And if you or someone you know is experiencing paranoia, remember that help is available. Seeking support is a sign of strength, not weakness. There are effective treatments and recovery is possible.
Well said. It's a reminder that mental health is just as important as physical health, and that everyone deserves access to quality care and support.
This has been a truly insightful deep dive. Thank you for guiding us through this complex and often misunderstood topic.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, the journey of understanding doesn't end here. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those minds engaged.
Great advice for all of us. Until next time, keep learning and keep diving deep into the fascinating world around us.